15 years ago, Captain Elias Drake sat in the cockpit of his starfighter, the engines humming quietly beneath him. The sky of Veros 9 was a storm of red and orange, clouds swirling with dust from the colony's ruined cities. The planet had been under attack by a faction of rogue warlords for months, and each day brought new challenges. Yet nothing had prepared him for what he would see that evening. Elias had been sent to rescue a small settlement near the edge of the Verosian plains. The reports had been vague, a handful of survivors trapped after the warlords' forces had destroyed their homes. As he flew closer, he saw the smoke rising from the ruined buildings and the small figures moving among the wreckage. Children, he realized, and families hiding wherever they could. His chest tightened. He had seen destruction before, but there was something about these people that made him fight harder. They weren't soldiers. They were ordinary beings, innocent and helpless. Landing his ship in the middle of the plain, Elias stepped out into the thick dust. The wind carried a strange smell, a mixture of burned metal and soil. He saw them immediately, a family of Arinthians, an alien race known for their slender frames, large luminous eyes, and soft, silver-blue skin. The father lay unconscious, wounded by a stray blast. The mother clutched a baby girl close to her chest, her eyes wide with fear. Around them, chaos erupted as the warlords' drones moved closer, their sharp, metallic claws digging into the ground. Elias didn't hesitate. He ran toward them, blaster raised, his movements precise yet calm. Years of training had taught him how to act in the worst situations, but nothing prepared him for the raw emotion he felt seeing the fear in the mother's eyes. "I've got you," he said firmly, in a voice meant to calm both them and himself. The mother hesitated, unsure whether to trust him, but something in his eyes made her nod. He lifted her and the baby into his arms, scanning the horizon for incoming attacks. The drones were fast, too fast for any ordinary fighter to dodge. Elias knew he had only minutes. He turned back toward his ship, every movement measured, calculating. Bullets and energy bolts whizzed past him, some exploding nearby, sending sparks into the air. He felt the heat of one as it scorched his arm, but he did not stop. Not now, not when so many lives depended on him. He reached the ship, slamming the doors shut behind him and starting the engines. The ship lifted into the air, shaking violently as it broke through the dust and debris. Through the cockpit's transparent shield, Elias saw the drones closing in. There was no way to outrun them all. He made a quick decision. The ship's weapons systems were powerful, but using them would risk the lives of the people he carried. So he flew straight into the midst of the drones, dodging as best he could, firing in quick bursts that sent several crashing into the ground. Then it happened. A massive energy blast struck the ship. The impact shook Elias violently, throwing him against the controls. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the cockpit. He felt his vision blur, a ringing sound in his ears, and then nothing. Darkness swallowed him. For 60 minutes, Elias Drake was dead. His heart had stopped, his mind unresponsive, and his body motionless in the cockpit. Outside, the world continued. The Arinthian family he had risked his life to save stumbled through the plain, unaware of the human who had given everything for them. They ran until they reached safety, tears flowing, unsure how they had survived. The baby, the future princess of their people, was clutched tightly in the mother's arms, her tiny face pressed against her chest. The colony might have been lost, but these 3 lives had been saved, thanks to a human who had risked everything. Inside the ship, a small medical device activated automatically, designed to restart a pilot's heart in emergencies. Slowly, painfully, Elias' heart began to beat again. His eyes fluttered open, and he gasped for air, tasting dust and metal. He looked at the cockpit's instruments, the screens flickering with warnings, and then down at the controls he had barely managed to hold during the attack. He was alive. Against all odds, he had come back. Elias didn't immediately celebrate. The faces of the rescued family haunted him. The baby's small eyes, the mother's trembling hands, and the father's unconscious body were burned into his memory. He had survived, but not for himself. He had survived to see the lives he saved continue. For the first time, he realized that being a hero wasn't about glory. It was about sacrifice. The Arinthians named him their savior. Though they did not fully understand human customs, they honored him with an ancient ceremony, one that had been reserved for the greatest protectors of their people. They wrapped him in ceremonial robes, placed symbols of their culture in his hands, and told him that his bravery would never be forgotten. "You have given life where death was certain," they said, their voices melodic and deep. "If ever our people are in danger again, your hand will be called upon." After the ceremony, Elias returned to Earth, his mind heavy with memories. He took a quieter role in the human fleet, no longer seeking danger but ready if it ever found him. He trained new pilots, shared his experiences, and told stories of courage and survival. He never revealed everything about Veros 9, only that heroism sometimes came at a cost, and that ordinary humans were capable of extraordinary things when faced with impossible odds. The Arinthians, meanwhile, rebuilt their colonies, always keeping the story of Elias alive. They raised the baby girl Lyra with care and wisdom, knowing that one day she would inherit the throne of her people. She grew strong and clever, showing signs of intelligence and courage beyond her years. Even as a child, she spoke of the human who had risked his life for her family, and she dreamed of meeting him one day. Years passed. Elias continued his life on Earth, teaching and mentoring, occasionally glancing at the stars, wondering about the people he had saved. The galaxy moved on, wars came and went, but the memory of Veros 9 never faded. He had seen the worst of destruction and the best of hope in one terrifying night. He had learned that humans, though fragile, could achieve greatness through bravery, compassion, and selflessness. And far across the galaxy, Lyra grew, guided by the story of the human who had given her life a chance. She did not know exactly when or how, but she felt that one day her path would cross with his again. That feeling, a mixture of destiny and gratitude, burned in her heart like a small, steady flame. The universe is vast, and its dangers are countless, but Elias Drake had already proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Not because of technology, not because of numbers, but because humans could choose to act when others fled, could stand when others fell, and could give themselves fully to protect others. On the night that would later be remembered as the turning point of Veros 9's survival, Elias had faced death, and in doing so, he had shown that one human life, given completely, could ripple across time and space, shaping the destiny of an entire alien civilization. 15 years later, that ripple would return to him in the form of a small, silver-blue princess, unaware of the legend her people would tell, but about to change the life of the man who had saved her before she could even walk. For now, Elias did not know this. For now, he only knew the quiet hum of the starship engines, the memory of a burning sky, and the knowledge that sometimes courage meant facing death so others could live. And that knowledge, deep in his bones, would guide him through the challenges he could never yet imagine. 15 years had passed since that night on Veros 9, and Captain Elias Drake had settled into a quiet life on Earth. He no longer piloted starships into war zones, and he no longer sought danger. Instead, he taught young humans at the Galactic Flight Academy, training them in piloting, strategy, and survival. He enjoyed his life of relative peace, though every evening he looked up at the stars and thought of the people he had saved, the Arinthian family, the baby girl who would one day be a princess. That evening, the sky was clear, the sun dipping behind the distant mountains. Elias had just finished his final lesson of the day and was returning to his modest home at the edge of the academy. He liked the quiet of the place, with only the soft hum of solar generators and the occasional chirp of birds. He had no idea that this quiet evening would change his life forever. As he stepped onto his porch, a strange shimmer caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, the sun reflecting on the distant mountains. But then it grew brighter, more solid, until a small portal hovered a few meters from the ground. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and Elias' instincts, honed over decades, told him that this was no ordinary phenomenon. Before he could react, a figure stepped out of the portal. Elias froze, his breath catching in his throat. The being that emerged was unlike any human, yet strangely familiar. She was a young girl, perhaps 12 years old, with silver-blue skin that glowed faintly in the fading sunlight. Her eyes were large, luminous, and intelligent, with a depth that suggested she had already seen far more than her age should allow. Her hair shimmered like strands of starlight, and her small, delicate hands were folded in front of her. Elias' first thought was disbelief. He had seen many strange beings in his life, but the way this girl moved, the quiet confidence in her stance, made him stop in his tracks. She looked at him directly, and for a moment neither spoke. "I am Lyra," the girl said finally, her voice clear and melodic, though tinged with a human-like accent that made it easy to understand. "I am the princess of the Arinthians. I have been sent to you. The Arinthian Council says you are the one who can protect me," she continued. "Our world is in danger, and they have chosen you to help me. You saved my life once. Now you must guide me again. The Council says you have the courage, the wisdom, and the skill to face what is coming. I need your help." And more than that, it was asking him to risk everything again for the sake of a child who had already survived so much. He took a step closer, studying her face. She seemed small, fragile even, but there was a fire in her eyes that told him she was stronger than she appeared. "Why come to me?" he asked. "There are others who could protect you. Why not your own people? You have already shown what humans are capable of." If this warlord truly posed a threat, then perhaps it was time for humans to rise once more. He nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "I'll help you, but you must understand this will not be easy. The universe is full of dangers, and we cannot expect it to be kind. I must be ready to protect my people." He realized that this child, this princess, was unlike any being he had ever encountered. She carried both fragility and strength in the same breath, a combination that made her dangerous in the best possible way. For the next several hours, they talked. Lyra told him about her upbringing, the training she had received from the Arinthian Council, and the subtle powers she had developed: telepathy, energy manipulation, and heightened perception. She had been educated in diplomacy, combat, and strategy, though much of it had been theoretical. Ilias listened carefully, asking questions, testing her knowledge, and gradually understanding the depth of her intelligence. He realized that training her would not be easy. She had abilities far beyond humans, but her understanding of strategy and combat needed refinement. More importantly, she needed someone who had faced death and returned, someone who could teach her how to make decisions when the stakes were impossibly high. He thought of the night on Veros 9, of the chaos, of the fear, and of the choices that had meant life or death. Perhaps, he thought, that experience was precisely what she needed. As night fell, Ilias prepared a small meal, and for a moment they shared silence. The quiet was comforting, a brief pause before the storm they both knew was coming. Lyra's eyes wandered to the window, to the stars that stretched endlessly across the sky. "The universe is so big," she said softly. "Sometimes it feels like we are nothing." "That's exactly why we matter," he said. "We may be small, but our choices, our courage, and our actions, they can change everything. Never forget that." The next morning, Ilias began her training. He started with the basics: human combat techniques, quick thinking, and tactical maneuvers. Lyra was a fast learner, combining what she had already learned from the Arinthian Council with the human methods he taught. She adapted quickly, surprising him again and again. Her ability to merge human ingenuity with Arinthian powers created combinations he had never seen before. Ilias realized something profound. Humans were not just capable of heroism in moments of desperation. Their creativity, adaptability, and ability to think differently gave them a strength that could rival even the most advanced alien technology. In Lyra's hands, human methods became amplified, giving her an edge that could tip the balance of any battle. But training was only one part of the challenge. As they worked, Ilias noticed subtle signs of the approaching threat. Small ships appeared near Earth's orbit, scanning silently, their technology advanced and unfamiliar. The warlord's reach was growing. He had underestimated the human capacity for resilience and ingenuity once, but Ilias would ensure that history did not repeat itself. By the end of the second week, Lyra could pilot a small craft with skill and precision, and her combat abilities were formidable. She had grown confident, but Ilias knew the real test would come in the field, against real danger, not just simulations. Still, he was impressed. She was no longer the fragile child who had been delivered to him. She was strong, capable, and ready to face the universe's perils. That evening they stood outside, looking at the stars. Lyra's small hand rested lightly on the railing, and her eyes reflected the endless expanse above them. "Do you think I can do it?" she asked quietly. Ilias placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. "I know you can," he said. "You are stronger than you think. You have courage, intelligence, and determination. Those are the things that matter most. Technology and power are important, but without courage, they are useless. Remember that." For the first time, Ilias felt a sense of hope. Perhaps humanity's ingenuity, combined with Arinthian power, could face the darkness that loomed on the horizon. Perhaps this small girl, carried to safety by his hands so long ago, could lead her people and change the course of history. As night fell, the portal from which Lyra had arrived shimmered faintly in the distance. Ilias knew it would not be long before the warlord discovered her location. But for now, they had time. Time to prepare, time to train, and time to strengthen the bond between human and Arinthian. And in that bond, Ilias saw the reflection of something greater, a future where courage, wisdom, and humanity could shape the fate of the galaxy itself. For the first time in years, Elias Drake felt ready. Ready to face the unknown. Ready to protect the girl he had once saved. And ready to show the universe why humans, fragile as they may seem, were capable of extraordinary things. Elias watched Lyra as she moved through the training room, her small form agile and precise. The exercises were not easy, even for someone with natural abilities. Elias had designed a series of challenges to test her reflexes, strategy, and adaptability. He wanted to see if she could think like a human in the heat of danger, combining her Arinthian powers with the ingenuity that humans often use to survive impossible odds. Lyra was focused. Her eyes were sharp, her movements quick, and her energy manipulation, though subtle, was growing stronger. She could deflect small energy blasts with skill, jump farther than any human, and sense approaching dangers almost instinctively. Yet Elias knew that raw ability alone would not be enough. The warlord's forces were not ordinary enemies. They were cunning, brutal, and relentless. To survive, she would need more than power. She would need strategy, foresight, and the ability to act when everything seemed lost. He raised his hand, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a fleet of enemy ships moving in complex formations across a star system. "Imagine this is the warlord's fleet," Elias said. "Your task is to find the weak point, the place where you can strike, and the safest route for your people to escape. Think fast. One mistake and thousands of lives are at risk." She paused, then tapped a sequence of commands that isolated a small cluster of vulnerable ships. "If we target these first," she said, "we can slow the fleet and create a path for the rest of our forces to retreat. The rest can follow while we hold them off." That is what gives humans an edge. Technology alone doesn't win battles, it's how you use it. Lyra adapted quickly, blending her natural instincts with what Elias taught her, creating strategies that surprised even him. One morning, as they prepared for a simulation, a sudden alert interrupted them. Elias' communicator beeped urgently. "Unidentified ships approaching Earth orbit," the voice on the other end said. "Sensors indicate high-level warlord technology. They are scanning the planet." That is where humans have always succeeded, using intelligence and creativity to overcome stronger enemies. He had faced death before, and he knew that courage, planning, and quick thinking could turn the tide. Lyra studied the ships with a mixture of fear and resolve. "What should we do?" she asked. Elias pointed to a small cluster near the edge of the fleet. "Those are the support ships. If we can disable them first, the rest of the fleet will be slowed. Humans are unpredictable, and that unpredictability is our strength. We'll use that." They worked together seamlessly, a combination of human ingenuity and Arinthian talent that created strategies no ordinary enemy could predict. When the attack began, it was chaotic. The warlord's ships moved with precision, firing energy beams that cut through the vacuum of space like lightning. Lyra maneuvered her craft with skill, using her powers to deflect attacks and outmaneuver enemies. Elias' commands guided her through complex patterns, predicting enemy movements and exploiting weaknesses. For the first time, Lyra faced true danger. A massive cruiser turned toward her, firing relentlessly. She felt the heat of the blasts and the vibrations of energy strikes against her ship. Her heart pounded, but she remembered Elias' lessons: stay calm, observe, and act decisively. Using a combination of speed, energy manipulation, and strategic movement, she dodged the attacks, leading the cruiser into a trap where a holographic decoy fleet awaited. The cruiser collided with the decoys, disabling its weapons and giving human and Arinthian forces an advantage. Elias watched from the control room, pride and concern mingling in his chest. Lyra was doing everything right, but the real test would come when she faced the warlord himself. He was ruthless, intelligent, and cunning. No one had defeated him before, and Elias knew that only by combining human unpredictability with Lyra's powers could they hope to survive. After the skirmish, they returned to their base. Lyra's craft was scratched and battered, but she was unharmed. She stepped out, her expression serious but determined. "They are strong," she said, "but they cannot predict what we will do. That is our advantage. That is why we survive." Each exercise brought her closer to readiness, but Elias knew that nothing could fully prepare her for the real battle. One evening, as they rested after a long day of drills, Elias spoke quietly. "Lyra, you are ready for the first real mission, but you must remember something important. Strength alone is not enough. Courage, intelligence, and compassion are what make a true leader. Your people will look to you not just for power, but for guidance, for hope. Never forget that." Lyra piloted her craft with precision, using her powers to remain undetected while Elias monitored from the main control hub. They gathered intelligence on the enemy fleet, noting the placement of ships, the flow of energy, and the weaknesses in the defenses. Every detail was recorded, analyzed, and planned for future action. During the mission, they encountered a patrol ship. It was fast and well-armed, designed to intercept intruders. Lyra hesitated for a moment, her hands gripping the controls tightly. Then she remembered Elias' lessons: act decisively, use your advantage, think creatively. She fired a small energy pulse that disrupted the patrol ship's sensors, then used a combination of speed and agility to evade its attacks. Elias guided her through a series of maneuvers that forced the patrol to retreat, giving them valuable data and reinforcing their strategy. Back at the base, Elias debriefed her. "That is how humans fight," he said. "We do not rely solely on strength. We use our minds, our instincts, and our creativity. That is why we survive, why we adapt, and why we can face threats far greater than ourselves." She understood that leadership was not about power alone, but about strategy, courage, and the willingness to act when others could not. As the sun set, casting a golden glow across the training field, Elias and Lyra stood side by side, looking out at the horizon. The galaxy was full of dangers, and the warlord's forces were still out there, waiting. But for the first time, Elias felt a sense of hope. Together, human and Arinthian mentor and student, they could face whatever came next. Lyra turned to him, her eyes bright. "We are ready," she said. Elias nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "Yes, we are ready, and the universe will soon see what humans can do." Now he had a new purpose: to guide Lyra, to prepare her for the battles ahead, and to show the galaxy that human courage, intelligence, and adaptability were forces to be reckoned with. The warlord might be powerful, but humans had something that no technology, no weapon, and no alien force could ever match: the ability to think, to adapt, and to fight against impossible odds. And as night fell over Earth, Elias Drake knew that the real test was coming. The galaxy's future, the survival of the Arinthian people, and the fate of countless lives would soon depend on the lessons he had taught and the strength that Lyra had begun to discover. Together they would face the darkness, and together they would prove that humans, fragile as they seemed, were capable of extraordinary things. The warning sirens blared across the Galactic Flight Academy's communication network, echoing through the empty training halls and the observation decks. Elias Drake's eyes narrowed as he ran his fingers over the console, analyzing the incoming data. The warlord's fleet had arrived in force, much faster and more organized than he had expected. It was one thing to train for a simulation, another entirely to face the real thing. Lyra stood beside him, her small hands clenched tightly. Her eyes scanned the fleet displayed on the holographic map, taking in the positions, formations, and weapon systems. Elias noticed the focus in her gaze, the way she absorbed every detail as if it were part of her own body. She was no longer the child who had arrived on his doorstep weeks ago. She had grown into a capable strategist, ready to act under pressure. "They're approaching fast," Elias said. "We have to move. If they reach Earth's orbit without interference, the human colonies nearby will be at risk. This is where we test everything we've learned." Elias followed her into the control hub, where he could coordinate the fleet, provide guidance, and respond to threats as they appeared. The first wave of the warlord's ships entered the system, cutting through space with terrifying precision. Their weapons glowed bright, scanning for targets. Elias instructed the fleet to hold formation, but he knew that rigid tactics would fail against this enemy. Humans survived because they could improvise, adapt, and think differently. He needed his fleet to act unpredictably, using deception and creativity to gain an advantage. "Lyra, remember what we practiced," he said over the comms. "Use your abilities not just to defend, but to confuse and redirect them. Make them miscalculate." With a burst of speed, she darted between two larger cruisers, firing carefully calculated shots that disabled their weapons systems without destroying them. The moves were precise, but they were also unexpected, exactly what Elias had trained her to do. From the control hub, Elias monitored the chaos. He could see the enemy fleet reacting to the unpredictable movements of his small forces. It was working. The warlord had assumed superiority, but human ingenuity was creating openings that would allow the fleet to fight back. "Good," Elias muttered, watching Lyra execute a maneuver that forced a heavily armed cruiser into the path of an asteroid field. The ship collided with debris, its shields failing and engines sputtering. "That's it, keep pushing." Energy beams streaked across the void, ships twisted and turned, dodging and counterattacking. Lyra's craft weaved through the chaos, using both Arinthian powers and human tactics to stay ahead of destruction. Elias coordinated the fleet, calling out maneuvers, predicting enemy movements, and exploiting every weakness. The combination of human creativity and Arinthian skill created strategies the warlord could not anticipate. Despite their success, the cost was high. Some ships were damaged, and a few had to retreat. Lyra's small craft was scratched and shaken by near misses, but she remained focused. She had learned not just to survive, but to lead. Her decisions were fast, precise, and most importantly, unexpected. The warlord's forces had never encountered tactics like these before, and it gave the fleet a chance to regain control. Elias realized that humans had always thrived in impossible situations because they were willing to act when others hesitated. They could adapt, improvise, and combine skills in ways no other species anticipated. Lyra, using those lessons, had become the embodiment of that human advantage. Hours passed. The warlord's fleet was powerful, but disorganized in response to the unpredictable strikes from the human Arinthian team. Elias identified the warlord's flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons at the center of the formation. "Lyra," he said, pointing to the display, "that ship is the key. If we can neutralize it, the rest of the fleet will collapse. But it won't be easy. You'll need to use everything we've trained for." "We can do it." The flagship responded with devastating force, firing beams that could destroy smaller ships in an instant. Lyra felt the heat of the energy as it struck near her craft, shaking it violently. She remembered Elias' lessons: stay calm, observe, and act decisively. With a sudden burst of speed, she moved behind the flagship, releasing a pulse that temporarily disabled its engines. The warlord's flagship staggered and the decoy fleet struck, disabling its weapon systems. Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "That's it. You've done it." Ships that seemed invincible fell to clever maneuvers, energy manipulation, and well-timed attacks. The warlord's forces began to retreat, and the battle slowly tipped in favor of Elias and Lyra. After hours of fighting, the battlefield fell silent. The warlord's fleet had been driven away, damaged and disorganized. Lyra's craft floated among the wreckage, scratched but intact. Elias guided her back to base, pride and relief mingling in his chest. She had done more than survive. She had led, strategized, and executed complex maneuvers that saved countless lives. Back at the base, Lyra climbed out of her craft, her small frame tired but unbowed. She looked at Elias, her eyes shining. "We did it," she said. Elias smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Yes. But remember, this is only the beginning. There will be other threats, other battles. What matters is that we face this one with courage, intelligence, and teamwork. That is what humans are capable of." Elias continued to train Lyra, teaching her advanced tactics, strategic planning, and ways to combine human unpredictability with Arinthian abilities. Through it all, Lyra's confidence grew. She was no longer a passenger in the galaxy's chaos. She was a leader, capable of making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Her respect for humans, especially Elias, deepened as she saw their creativity, courage, and determination in action. She understood now that humans might seem fragile, but their true strength lay in their minds, their hearts, and their willingness to act when others could not. One evening, after a long day of strategy exercises and fleet drills, Elias and Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking at the stars. The remnants of the warlord's fleet were far away, but the threat still loomed. "Do you think we can stop him for good?" Lyra asked quietly. Elias shook his head. "I don't know. The galaxy is full of dangers, and this warlord is clever. But I do know this: humans have a way of surviving, even when the odds are impossible. We think differently, we adapt, and we act when others hesitate. That is why we are still here, why we have won battles before, and why we will fight again." She had learned much in the past weeks, but this lesson was perhaps the most important. Courage, creativity, and adaptability could overcome even the greatest threats. She felt a surge of determination. She would not fail her people, and she would not fail Elias. Together, they could face whatever came next. The night was calm, but Elias knew it was only temporary. The warlord would return, and the real challenge had yet to come. But for now, humanity and the Arinthians had shown that together, they could stand against overwhelming odds. The galaxy would remember this battle, not just for the ships destroyed or the strategies used, but for the courage and ingenuity of a human and a young princess who refused to give up. Elias placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we train more, prepare more, and get ready for what is coming. The universe may be vast, but humans have a way of leaving a mark. You've seen it firsthand, and now you are part of that mark. And I am ready. And now that hope was alive in Lyra as well, ready to face the darkness that awaited them. The stars stretched endlessly above, silent witnesses to the events of the galaxy. In that silence, Elias and Lyra stood together, human and Arinthian, mentor and student, preparing for the battles to come. The warlord had been driven back, but the future was still uncertain. Yet in that moment, they knew one thing. Together, they could face whatever challenges the universe sent their way. And as the night deepened, Elias Drake smiled quietly. Humanity had survived countless dangers, and now, through Lyra, their courage, ingenuity, and spirit would continue to shine across the stars, proving that even the smallest beings could achieve greatness when they refused to give up. The warlord's fleet had been pushed back, and the skies were quiet once more. But Elias Drake knew that victory was only temporary. The galaxy was full of dangers, and peace was never guaranteed. Yet standing beside him, Princess Lyra radiated confidence and determination. She had grown into a capable leader, someone ready to face challenges far greater than herself. Elias felt a deep sense of pride, tempered by the knowledge that her real journey was only beginning. Earth and the Arinthian colonies began to rebuild. The people had seen what humans and Arinthians could achieve together, and the stories of courage, strategy, and ingenuity spread quickly. Lyra, now a young teenager, became a symbol of hope and unity. Everywhere she went, her presence inspired loyalty and respect. Children looked up to her, soldiers followed her lead, and even humans who had once doubted alien powers marveled at her skill and courage. Elias remained her mentor, guiding her not just in strategy, but in leadership. Every decision she made was discussed, analyzed, and practiced. They held councils with Arinthian leaders, human commanders, and diplomats from nearby colonies. Lyra listened carefully, asking questions, learning the art of compromise and negotiation. She learned that being a leader was not just about strength, intelligence, or power. It was about understanding people, inspiring trust, and acting with wisdom. One morning, Elias and Lyra stood together on a hill overlooking a restored Arinthian settlement. Children played nearby, their laughter a reminder of why they had fought so hard. Lyra's eyes followed them, her expression serious but calm. "I never thought I would see this," she said softly, "a place of peace after so much destruction." Courage, intelligence, and compassion, that is what shapes history. That gift had saved her life once, and it had helped her lead her people to safety now. As the weeks passed, Lyra continued her training, blending human and Arinthian methods into new strategies. She tested her ideas in simulations and in real maneuvers with the fleet. Her skills became legendary among her people. They admired her not just for her powers, but for the way she thought, led, and inspired. She had learned to combine Arinthian abilities with human ingenuity, creating tactics that could outsmart even the most advanced enemy fleets. Meanwhile, Elias worked behind the scenes, coordinating alliances with nearby human colonies. He shared his knowledge of strategy, combat, and survival, teaching humans and Arinthians alike how to work together. He reminded them that it was not weapons or technology alone that won battles, but courage, creativity, and adaptability. One evening, Lyra asked Elias about the night he had saved her as a baby. "Do you remember that night?" she asked quietly. Elias nodded, his gaze distant. "I remember everything. I remember the fire, the fear, the chaos. I remember holding you in my arms and knowing I had to get you to safety no matter what. You were so small, so fragile, but even then there was something about you, a spark that told me you were meant for great things. You are here because of yourself. You survived, you learned, and you grew stronger. I only guided you. Humans can inspire, teach, and protect, but true greatness comes from within. You have that greatness, Lyra. Always remember it." The ceremony was held in a grand hall, filled with representatives from human colonies and Arinthian settlements. The hall was decorated with banners, symbols of unity, and glowing orbs that floated above the crowd. Lyra walked gracefully to the center, her silver-blue skin glowing softly in the light, her eyes calm yet determined. Elias stood nearby, proud but humble, knowing he had played only a small part in her journey. The council spoke of her courage, her wisdom, and her ability to unite humans and Arinthians alike. They praised Elias as the human who had saved her life and mentored her into a leader worthy of the throne. Lyra knelt briefly before the council, receiving the ceremonial crown and rose as Queen of the Arinthians. The crowd erupted in cheers, celebrating not just her ascension, but the enduring bond between humans and Arinthians. As queen, Lyra immediately began working to strengthen ties between species. She emphasized collaboration, sharing knowledge, and learning from each other. Human tactics, creativity, and courage were combined with Arinthian abilities, intelligence, and technology, creating a powerful alliance that could face any threat. Elias continued to advise her, not as a commander, but as a mentor and friend, guiding her as she navigated the responsibilities of leadership. Months later, a message arrived from a distant human colony. Pirates had attacked, taking control of a vital space station. Lyra, confident in her abilities, turned to Elias. "Shall we help them?" she asked. Elias nodded. "Of course, this is what we do. Humans and Arinthians together protect the innocent, defend the weak, and stand against threats. You've learned well, Lyra. Now put it into practice." Humans were amazed at her leadership, while Arinthians admired her ability to combine their powers with human strategies. It was a perfect example of what they could achieve together. Elias watched from the command hub, a quiet smile on his face. Humans had once been underestimated, often seen as fragile or weak. But their courage, intelligence, and ability to adapt had always made them formidable. Through Lyra, that lesson had spread across the galaxy. Later, as they rested after the mission, Lyra turned to Elias. "I understand now," she said. "Humans are not just strong because of weapons or technology. It's because of their minds, their hearts, and their willingness to act when others cannot. That is why you survived, why I survived, and why we can protect our people." She implemented new training programs, combining human and Arinthian methods to prepare future leaders. She emphasized creativity, critical thinking, and adaptability. Humans who had once doubted their role in the galaxy now looked to them as equals, capable of shaping the future alongside the Arinthians. Elias, now older but still sharp, continued to guide her. He had taught her tactics, strategy, and combat skills, but he also taught her the most important lesson. Humanity's true power lay not in strength alone, but in courage, intelligence, and compassion. Lyra embodied all of these traits, proving that humans and Arinthians could achieve greatness together. One evening, as they looked out at the stars, Elias spoke quietly. "The galaxy is vast, Lyra, and there will always be challenges. But with courage, intelligence, and cooperation, we can face anything. Humans have survived countless dangers because we refuse to give up. And now, through you, that spirit will continue to inspire others. I will protect my people, honor our alliance, and ensure that humans are never underestimated again." But the true legacy was hers. The combination of Arinthian power and human ingenuity, united in a purpose greater than either could achieve alone. The stars stretched endlessly above, silent witnesses to the events of the galaxy. The warlord had been defeated, the colonies were safe, and a new era of cooperation and unity had begun. Humans and Arinthians now stood together, stronger than ever, ready to face whatever threats the universe could send. In that quiet moment, Elias realized something profound. Humans might seem small and fragile in the vastness of space, but their courage, intelligence, and creativity could change the course of history. Through their actions, through their determination to protect and inspire, they left a lasting mark on the galaxy. And as he looked at Lyra, crowned and confident, Elias knew that the future was bright. Humanity's spirit would continue, not just on Earth, but across the stars. Their ingenuity, courage, and willingness to act would shape the destiny of entire civilizations. The galaxy had witnessed one human sacrifice, one child's survival, and the rise of a leader who could unite worlds. And that legacy would continue as long as humans chose to act, to lead, and to stand for what was right. Elias Drake smiled quietly, a man who had once faced death and returned, knowing that the galaxy was in capable hands. Humanity had proven itself once again, and through Lyra, their courage, creativity, and spirit would shine across the stars for generations to come.